you to the dead. I'll punch you to the dead. Talk about the globe, standing 10 toes with your theory to the test. Your theory to the test. We be the SBS. We be the SBS. I'll punch you to the dead. I'll punch you to the dead. Show me what you know, beliefs and principles, and say it with your chest. Say it with your chest. Melanin popping, and we gonna see conversation, reality. What you want, we got what you need. A dose of the truth, a brick of the street. Gotta touch grass when you on this scene. Sometimes seem too gray to me. Either it is or it ain't. Gotta keep it tall. Small thoughts, R.I.P. Flawed in all. Righteous call. Grow folks tall. BS fall. Pull your stack. Break your guard. Stereotypes can't play this long. Throw your scripts against this wall. Talking points to your flaw. Legs too limb. Take this wall. Gotta keep it trill. Gotta keep it raw like yes. Or punch it to the dead. Or punch it to the dead. Talk about the globe. Standing 10 toes with your theory to the test. Theory to the test. We be the SBS. We be the SBS. Or punch it to the dead. Or punch it to the dead. Show me what you know. Beliefs and principles. And say it with your chest. Say it with your chest. Too extreme to ever be. We bring balance to how you think. Do it make sense? Will it really work? Put it to the test. Tell me what you seen. What you heard, will it really be? Did you fail? Did it succeed? Hey, what you want? Here's what you need. Get out your brain and get on your feet. SPSPOD. RAW and we need you to tap that blue leaf. Chop it up, tap it in, and let's speak. Let's see. The trap of the nerd. The high girl swerve. The wife, the husband, the bee. The single, the baddie, the righteous, the ratchet. All get a chance to speak. SBS. Or punch it to the dead. Or punch it to the dead. Talk about the globe. Standing 10 toes with your theory to the test. Theory to the test. We be the SBS. We be the SBS. Or punch it to the dead. Or punch it to the dead. Show me what you know. Beliefs and principles. And say it with your chest. Say it with your chest.
Check, 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 check. Let's go, let's go. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the SPS podcast. You are now tuned in with your host, DJ Strada, and this is the Raw Bunch. I got a special episode I wanted to drop for you all this evening. It's a little different than what we normally do, right? So y'all know what the Raw Bunch, we'll talk about stuff. We'll kind of lock in. What's up, Rita? Bino, what it is, my good brother. You know the count. Make sure I hit the like on the way in, share to somebody, but this is a special show, right? So what we're doing this time around is a little different than most of our shows. So normally I'll have the panelists up here and we'll talk about a particular topic, right? And that's cool, but this time I wanted to address something very specific. So if you're around in the YouTube streets, or if you just been online, or maybe you're on social media, you'll see that a new trend that we're walking into is it's an alarming stat, right? So what I wanted to do is break down this statistic. We're going to break down where it came from, the authors of said topic, and we're going to actually go through the paper where the stat comes from. And why this is so important is for a few reasons. The stat that I'm talking about is, and I got a few videos to show and illustrate this, but what the stat is saying is that Black wealth is headed to $0 by the year of 2053, right? So what you'll see is when people are referencing this stat, they'll say things like, we got to get it together before 2053, because by then the net income of Black people will be zero. So that was very interesting when I heard it. Now, I don't do this often, but I do want to kind of give you all an exercise on how I actually dissect information when I hear like alarming stats like that. The first thing I do is I want to find a source, right? So I found a source, and I'm going to walk you all through with a couple of videos, a couple of real quick slides, and we're going to walk down the statistic, where it came from, how it originated, who wrote it, and how you should probably start looking at some of this information. Now, my disclaimer is this: as a black people, we definitely have to get better. So let me just say that plainly, right? In a lot of ways, there is a huge gap between us and our counterparts. So I'm not ignorant or obtuse to that. I just wanted to make sure that the projection made sense. So I found the article and I'm going to share a couple of things with you all. We're going to go through some slides. We're going to figure out how they came to this projection and what it actually means to us as black people. So if you come in, make sure you hit the like video, share it to somebody. But this was going to be more of an informational presentation versus a panel style. Now, the link is in the chat. If you do want to hit the link and come up here and kind of discuss it with me and break it down with me. But this will be more of a presentation style versus the normal Thursday show that y'all used to. So let's get straight to it, man. The first thing I want to bring up for you all is let's go to a couple of videos that speaks to this point so you all can see what I'm saying when I said that this isn't a new phenomenon. A couple of people bring it up. So let's go and get on the first video, and we're going to kind of see how people are looking at this wealth to zero and what they're saying about it. So let's do it.
Mika, there was a study recently done called The Road to Zero Wealth, done by the Institute of Policy Studies, I think it was. And they were just talking about in diverse populations, how African Americans at the fastest rate, Latino Americans at the next fastest rate, are on a road to zero wealth. Now, an interesting thing was they weren't talking about people not making enough money. So it wasn't low income households. They were more so focusing on low wealth households, which means that a lot of people are making money, but because they don't have the knowledge of what to do with the money, they're not building wealth in their house.
I think that's absolutely crazy, because a lot of times people think that, oh, I'm not making enough money, you know, how am I supposed to save? How am I supposed to invest? But maybe you are making the money, you just are not managing the money the way that you need to manage it.
Absolutely.
And if you manage the money better, then you'll find areas where you can invest more money and really prepare for your future.
All right, so let's go through that clip, right? This is what you're going to always find interesting with these next few videos I'm going to play, is that everyone references this road to zero wealth. And it seems almost as if it's an opener to grab the attention of the people they're talking to. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But even in the video, it seems almost as if he took the onus off of the lower class of us. He said that those that are raising up, you know, they're going to be at this zero marker. What I find interesting is they didn't say anything wrong after he kind of broached it as abruptly as he did. So again, I do think that as black people, we have to be conscious of where our money is going, right? So there's nothing wrong. And that's what I found, is that whenever I heard this stat and found a few videos on it, the advice that comes after isn't what I have a problem with. I just think that the context is misplaced, right? And so this is why when you hear alarming things like this, I'm not saying you have to do this every time, but it's a very good exercise for you to go find it for yourself, because sometimes you'll be surprised. Other times you'll find that the information that you're hearing is actually correct. But this is something we got to get in the habit of doing, because a lot of times we misrepresent ourselves and we do ourselves a disservice by assuming everything you hear is valid enough to repeat, right? Some things are, but a lot of things should be filtered, right? Read it for yourself if it's that important to you. But this is the thing, as a people, we cannot become this lazy to where once you hear something, you then internalize it enough to parrot it to someone else to then say your point. Because now we're adding on faulty foundations, and this is what shit gets started. So, for example, if the gentleman that was talking to the young lady, if he actually went through the study, I think that what he said afterwards would have been changed a bit based on the actual study versus him just going off the narrative of by 2053, we're going to be broke. The wealth will be at zero, right? And so this is how you can kind of convolute a very good point with a bad stat anchor, right? So I got one more video and I'm gonna actually pull up the study and we're gonna go through it. But I just wanted y'all to kind of pay attention to all the videos I play. They kind of have the same theme, to where the grabber is by 2053, black people are going to have a wealth of zero, and then they'll say something that does make sense and it's very logical, but it doesn't quite fit what the actual paper says. So I got one more video and I'm going to actually introduce it. So let's get to this next one, see what y'all think about this one. Make sure you hit the like button on the way in, share this to somebody. But again, this is more informational and this is a slow cook. So let's keep going, man.
According to the 2017 report, The Road to Zero Wealth, authored by Prosperity Now and the Institute for Policy Studies, it is estimated that by 2024, median Black and Latino households are projected to own 60 to 80% less wealth than they did in 1983. By then, the continued rise in racial wealth inequality between median Black, Latino, and white households is projected to lead white households to own 99 and 75 times more wealth than their Black and Latino counterparts, respectively. If the racial wealth divide is left unaddressed, and is not exacerbated further over the next 8 years, median Black household wealth is on a path to hit zero by 2053, about 10 years after it is projected that racial minorities will comprise the majority of the nation's population. Median Latino household wealth is projected to hit zero 20 years later, or by 2073. In sharp contrast, median white household wealth would climb to $137,000 by 2053 and $147,000 by 2073.
Why is that important? So I've actually pulled that clip from the Institute and the group that published a study, right? They have a list of different seminars that are great. And I think that for what their purpose was, they did a real good job. And what I mean by that is they got the stat out to the internet, to the ethernet, and so it grabs people's attention. But then when you actually look and pull up the publishing and the article, you're going to find very quickly that what is being stated is based off of a projection. But I wanted to show it to y'all versus you just taking my word for it based on what I read. So I got a couple of slides I want to present to y'all just so we can all be on the same page of what we're actually looking at. So let's take a look at this. So here are the key findings from the Road to Zero Wealth report. And again, this is an actual report from the group Prosperity Now. On the bottom of the screen, I want to bring y'all attention first, before we even get into anything in the article. This is super important. Let's take a look at these authors, right? These authors represent a group and subdivision of Prosperity Now. Why is it important to know that? When you're looking up any stat, the first thing you know is who's giving you the stat and why they're giving it to you. So the authors of the Road to Zero Wealth report are committed to advancing economic opportunity and racial wealth equity for all. Why is that important? That lets you know right off the rip that although their projection, no matter how good or how bad it is, the main thing they're trying to attack is the racial wealth gap because they want equity. I think that's a noble cause, right? But let's look a little closer at how they did it based on this report. So the first thing, the projection. Based on their trends, and I believe the trends were started from like the 80s up into like 2013. And it's important to know that during that time period, there was a sharper decline for Black people and an incline for white people. Now, granted, the gap between the two has always been there. So that's not the problem. The issue is that the projection that they made to 2053 was based off of that decline in the year of like 2013 or something like that to continue to be that way. And we know that's not actually how it went. But let's do a breakdown of what was actually in the paper. And then I get a real quick kind of a slide presentation for y'all. You know, make sure you read it. It's about maybe 30 pages or so in a PDF. But the website here is listed. If you want to read the full report, it's at prosperitynow.org, Road to Zero Wealth. So you can look at the whole report for yourself. But you'll see that it says the median wealth of Black families declines while white wealth grows, widening the racial growth gap, right? And so at this point, they're saying white families have nearly 10 times more wealth than Black families. Why does this matter? Wealth builds power, opportunity, and security. We know that to be true, so no one's refuting that part of it. But this is why it matters based on the Prosperity Now. More wealth leads to better housing in the neighborhoods, better education, stronger business ownership, and more wealth leads to greater political power and influence. Now, think about it. This Prosperity Now group, that is one of their key goals. They're trying to leverage the fact that there's a gap to actually fight for more advancements of Black families. So again, great cause, but the projection may be off. Now, the root causes that they attribute this gap to is discriminatory policies. So like your housing, lending and employment, the wealth extraction and devaluation of black assets. And they talk about that throughout the paper when they're bringing up the taxation of the middle class, wealthy black people and how the tax advantages for white people is that much difference based on the way we file our taxes. I think it's like a 800% increase for white people and maybe like a 20 or 30% for black people. But just the returns you get back how you file taxes could be a root cause to this gap being so big. Also, the limited access to capital and credit, right? That's important because if you don't have access to money outside yourself, it's hard to grow if you're not even given the opportunity to leverage the fact that you make timely payments. And also the exclusion from wealth building opportunities. Again, that kind of goes hand in hand with what we already know to be true. Now, that solution is bold, but it is based on action. So I do think that's dope. You build wealth from the bottom up. Now, I'm going to get back to that point because I don't know if I quite agree with that, but we'll get into that a little more later. Make assets and capital more accessible. I think that's dope. Reform unjust systems and policies. Cool. And invest in communities and make better decisions. I like all of that. I think all of that is solid stuff, right? So I'm being honest with assessing what they're doing. And I think that it's a just cause. But as I show you these other slides, you're going to kind of see more and more of why I say that the projection is a little disingenuous, right? So it's kind of hard to explain until you've read the paper to understand that if the goal of this group is to show the delineation of black and white wealth, then of course what they would do is project their number based off the biggest gap between black and white people, which was that year from the 80s up until like early 2000s, right? And also during this gap, black people were in a decline, right? So this is why it's important that how you project and where you project from matters based on what you're trying to do. But think about it. That group of brothers and sisters, I think they got a dope cause, right? They're trying to illustrate to those that don't know, this is why these law changes are important. So that's very cool. But your projection is based off of the decline of black people for about 30 or 40 years. And again, the decline wasn't even that bad when you look at the actual numbers. But if you project that same decline happening for the next 40, 50, 60 years, then of course you get to zero eventually. That's only right, right? But understanding how you're even projecting the zero matters, right? Now, granted, within the paper, they talk about all of the laws and position changes of presidents that got us to where we currently are. And they're assuming that if similar policies or worse policies are passed, that it'll get us a zero. But what we do know is growth isn't as linear as we project. And that's the kind of the problem with projecting it out that way. The foundation of the argument is black wealth has stayed extremely low while white wealth has grown. That's cool. But let's take a look at these graphs and see whether that's the story that's actually being told. So let's take a look at this one. I'm going to see what y'all think about this. Black wealth has remained while white wealth has grown. Now, these are actual numbers from 83 to 2016, right? This is their data. Notice how I said earlier that their projection came from what they saw from 83 to 2016. Why is this actually important? If you take a look at the 2005, it seems to be a dip from 2005 to 2016. That's 11 years. So in 11 years, the median income went down 4,000. This is why they're projecting it out to 2053 to be a zero, because if you look, although minimal, there was slight and pretty good growth for the first 20 years before you get to 05, 06, right? Now, this is why, again, it's a little disingenuous for them to project it out this way, because no factors are included in how they got to the number. They just took this decline from that 10.5 to 6.3, and they projected that to continually stay down. So this is where bias is important. And I don't think they did this on purpose. Let me be clear. I don't think this was purposely or maliciously done, but I got to assess it for what it is, right? What this shows me, before I go, let me holler. What's up, Free Zone? There's no way to really protect or project that, and black wealth is in the incline right now. Exactly. And that's my point, Free Zone. It's important to remember why people are doing what they're doing. So if you're saying that black wealth was on a decline for the period of time and you're not accounting for all the factors, then yes, that is a horrible way to get the point across that you're trying to make, because then I'm not even the most intelligent person. I deal with numbers and graphs and shit a lot, but I know enough to know that that's just a disingenuous way to project data. You're not taking into account political climate, black awareness, black education, and I can keep going with a million things that makes this graph a little off, but this is why when you're looking at the numbers, it's super important. Now, based on the graph we just saw, this is where they projected, or how they projected to go. You see this? They're showing a complete sharp drop in black wealth and assumes that for the next 33 years, you will repeat where we are with no change. That's how they projected it to go to 2053 to 2097, even with it being zero and far beyond. That doesn't track. And see, this is where you got to be careful with how you're presenting data, because what you're saying is black people won't change, they won't grow, and what we see, we will continue to see. How does that even make sense? I think that we're at a point now to where black people are actually more aware of the changes we need to make. A lot of these shows we do, y'all know how we give it up here. We're going to be pro-black family. So we're going to talk about ways to get black men and black women together. We're going to be honest with our critiques. But the goal is we're trying to make this shit work. We're trying to make it shake. So under the assumption that a lot of these podcasts that start talking about this stuff didn't even exist that long ago, it would be hard for me to believe that by us even being aware of these numbers, that it's going to stay that way. That don't even make sense. Not to me, at least. Right? Because with more information, at least you'll have more that are willing to close the gap. I talk to homies all the time to where, you know, the conversations become more political, or we become more financial, at least when we talking, because we more aware that, yo, we got to get to this finish line. We got kids, we got to get through college. And I would say that during this time of my life, I'm around more financially sound people. I'm not saying that that's everybody's group, but I will say that the burst of Robinhood, when everybody was investing, the blow up of Bitcoin. There's so many ways that people now have been trying to attempt to garner money, even from 2013 to now. So if your projection is from the 80s to the mid 2000s, you didn't account for COVID. That's one. So your projection didn't have COVID in it, right? For two, you didn't count to the boom that black people would have and have been having since we've been locked inside. So this is how the projection doesn't even make sense, because you're basing it on old information and not the context of where we currently are. I'd be curious to see how they project out based on the new information we have. But again, everything else states that we're on an incline. So if black family wealth is supposed to project at zero, we can't explain why we're seeing a bump in marriages. Now, it's a small bump, but a bump nonetheless. So more people are actually considering getting married and getting married, even if it's not under the pretenses of the government, right? How is it that we're getting married at a higher clip, even though our income is our income? We're not being more smarter as families? That don't track to me. You know what I'm saying? And this is how projecting out, you got to read into how they did it, because it is important, right? Shout out to Yayos. He said, how is it possible when we are, how is it possible when we are becoming more educated and skilled? We're gaining more information. That's the point, Yayos, is that we are becoming more empowered. And so the projection just isn't as accurate as they would like it to be. Shout out to Free Zone. He says, one thing to say that black wealth is going down. It's another to say that black wealth is growing, but not fast enough to close the absolute gap with wealth. That is my point, Free Zone. If the goal is to catch white people, then we fucked up from the word go. Not that that shouldn't be something that competitively happens. That cannot be the focus, right? Because now you're throwing off what the true goal should be, and that's personal growth within itself. So if you're doing anything other than trying to compare it back to what it is, you're fucking up this entire thing. And again, back to the original prompt of this, the assumption is the problem. Let me show you how. So here, again, this is a slide we just looked at that showed you that, again, their projection here is the problem in the right top left corner. That's the first problem you run into. Now, the second problem that also exists in this is here. There's a lot of assumptions that went into this paper, and we got to break them down. The linear model is a problem when you're trying to project out human behavior. What do I mean? In a linear model, like they use in this publication, you got to repeat the past. You must have no behavior change, no policy change, no economic shock, and one outcome only. These are the reasons why quoting this stat does a disservice to how they did the research. Now, I love the fact that, again, this 2053 should wake people up, even if you don't know the context behind it. It's enough to should make you more serious about your finances. So let me start there, and I'm going to keep saying it. Even if you hear this being traded back and forth in convos on panels, just understand that the purpose of those doing it is to create a sense of urgency in people that need to have it. But in order for the stat they're quoting to be true, here are the things that must be assumed and known for us to reach that zero. You have to have a repeat of the past. There should be no behavior change in the people that you are assessing. There should be no policy changes based on where they did the projection, no economic shock at all, meaning no COVID, no recession, and only one outcome is there. Now, this is what actually happens in the real world. People's behaviors change. Policy changes, investment patterns change, education changes the outcomes, and multiple possible futures come. The entire projection is based on one assumption that nothing changes. That's how we know that this can't quite track the way they want it to based on the message that they're pushing. It's almost impossible, right? And so, again, back to the original point, I understand the intention. I get what the paper was trying to illustrate. I understand that. Mahogany, what's good with it? I'm good. I get what they're trying to do, but there's a way to do that, to be honest in how you reporting this shit and also get your goal met, which is let's close the gap. Now, so think about it. If Prosperity Now goal as a people is to close the gap, right? You can get that same message across by not speaking to the decline of Black people over the time period where we were the worst, versus let's talk about the gap that's always been there. We did a show not too long ago to where we actually looked at the 40-year mark of 2026 based on a year that was closer related to it, which is 1980. And in that graph, y'all saw over and over again that our white counterparts mirror us in behavior based on money, education, and marriage. So the bigger conversation has always been the gap that lies between. And I also think that Prosperity Now has that same thought in mind. They want to close the gap, and I think that's cool. But you can do that without demeaning the actual people that you want the gap to close for. Two things can be true. You can say, yes, we are increasing. Black people don't get comfortable because we are increasing, right? We're increasing in wealth. We're increasing in marriages. We're increasing in education, right? So these things are all on the uptick. The problem is that the gap that's existed for so long does not close with our progress because those above us are also progressing at the exact same rate, right? And when I say the same rate, think about two lines going the same way with the same distance between them. So if this one goes up, that one goes up. If this one goes down, that one follows. But this never happens. So if this is the white line, this is the black line. What isn't happening is this. So when we come to a point where we meet, what's always been happening, probably for the last, I think, based on my studies, for the last about 80 years or so, we've been parallel with each other. The same behavior you see in one, you see in the other, but the gap never closed. So I understand that if that wants to be your focal point, I can't have an argument with you. But if we're mirroring each other, then it's kind of unfair to project us to go to zero. And also you don't see a dip of the very same counterparts that you claim that the gap exists for, right? So if we were at 4,000 bands, you saying in 2053 you're gonna go 4,000 to 0, at least it would have been more academically honest to drop the white counterparts wealth by at least $4,000 or so, right? Because we're saying that the gap exists, but you can't say that our white counterparts, which is what's mentioned in a reference in an article, we can't say that black people and Latinos are going down and white people are going to continually go up, because that's never happened in history. It's never happened that way. We go down, they go down. Why? Because we're all under the same economic umbrella. Now, what happens to us also happened to them. I understand the whole, they get sick, we get the flu. I get that part, but the key in that point is everybody's sick. So even on the projections from the paper, they're suggesting that only the minority, as we grow in numbers, so as more of us being born, that as we're the majority of the minority, we will be at 0 in 2053. How does that make sense? So only black people and Latino people are going to be suffering from the economy if everything stays the same. It's a little disingenuous. I don't think it's done on purpose. And this is why, again, what you see and why this is such a slow cook is because I need people to understand this is the actual process it takes to understand what is being told to you. We had these phones in our faces, right? We're consuming YouTube at a higher clip, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, pick your poison. What's happening is these small statistics are getting embedded in people's minds, right? Now, a bigger point is being made, but if what grabs you is a 2053 and 0, that's what's stuck in your head, right? Who put it there? Why is it said? Again, if you are looking at any number and you are curious about it, the first thing you do is find the article or the reference point from the video. That's step one. Go find it. Step two, look at the author. Why? Because you need to know who reported this data and why. We found out it was a group of people that did that, but what's more important is who are they connected to? That's super important. You have to know that Prosperity Now, their goal is to close the gap. That's a real righteous goal. And again, if you haven't, go check it out on YouTube. They have a whole channel. It's called Prosperity Now. They got some real great hour seminars that shows you how they want to close the gap. So they're doing it through education and seminars. I ain't mad at that. But that report, it grossly underrepresents the resiliency of black people and what we are and what we do. You see what I'm saying? That's why it's super important for you to check these sources, bro. And I ain't talking about ChatGPT. That's a great start. ChatGPT is a great start, but you can't stop there, right? Because even if you do a quick ChatGPT of the road to zero wealth, like what is it? They're going to give you the highlights of what the article is saying. They don't tell you who the author is. They don't tell you why they wrote it. They don't tell you the agenda of the people that put it out. No one cares to dig that deep, and I get it. That's why this is a slow cook. I didn't do this show to rush. It ain't a lot of talking points here. I'm just showing y'all when I run across alarming shit, this is probably a good way for you to engage in things that alarm you. They might be true, right? So I'm not saying that everything you find and read is false. What I'm saying is there's a way to check it if you're going to internalize it at all. And we got to do these steps because we're becoming intellectually lazy. And that's a bigger problem than even trying to throw a stat or a narrative at people that you don't know, because you don't understand where your information is coming from or how they even came to it. That's super important to somebody like me, though. Right now, let's look at something completely different. Let's take a look at growth. So this was pulled from, and again, I got my sources at the bottom. This is the McKinsey growth report. This is from McKinsey and Company. And this is talking about black economic growth and how it's real. Now, the things I want y'all to see here is projected by 2030, black consumer spending is going to reach over $1.7 trillion. Also, The growth since the year 2000, we up 35% of Black people becoming the middle class. Also, income growth across generations has actually increased. How is this happening? How? You see how this works? If economic power is growing, how does that end at zero? Are we measuring the wrong thing? Right? See, here are the things that you have to ask yourself when you find things that conflict. You got to ask the right questions, though. Right? And that's the part that I really need y'all to take home from this. Shout out to Daily. What's good, my brother? What's going on? Mahogany's in the building. What's up, Mahogany? CJ, you know the count. What's good, my brother? Free Zone. Let's see what Free Zone said. Free Zone said, it's like a micro version of Keeping Up with the Joneses of pocket watching, which can actually disengage a lot of people from accumulating wealth. That is a fact, bro. Free Zone, this is exactly why it's important to keep your eyes on your own paper. Now, by all means, you should see where you measure up if we're talking about competing, right? That's super important. But you got to know why you're competing, what you're competing for, and what it actually means. So now let's take a look at the bigger picture. It's another reality. Wealth is concentrated, but asset ownership is growing. See how this works? This is a percentage of total net worth from 100%, and this shows you an increase and why it happens. How is this the same thing as us hitting zero? You see what's happening here? This is households by net worth based on the year 2019. If we're constantly growing in asset ownership, how will we then project it to go to zero? The top 10% of us is at 82.3% of the total net worth based on your household net worth. The middle of us is at 16%. The bottom is at 1.1%. Now, this is what we mean by increasing assets, retirement accounts, equity holdings, business assets. These are the things that the top 10% and the middle 40% of us are actually doing, right? This doesn't track to the projection. I'm going to keep saying it over and over because this is what we are fighting and I'm combating against. It's not that the intentions of the people that dropped the report are wrong. I'm going to keep saying that. That ain't what's happening here. What's happening is there's been a misrepresentation of growth because it assumes way too many constants that are just not true. Let's take a look at a couple of more stats. I'm going to bring up some more videos. Now that y'all got context, matter of fact, let's shift gears. Let's take a look at another video of a few people that brought up what we just saw and listen now with a different ear as to how people reference this stat. Pay attention to this.
So, there's a study out there that says that Black wealth is going to go to zero by like 2053. We're going to be alive for that.
Right. Yeah.
Y'all know that?
Yeah.
So whose job is it to counteract what is supposed to be a future that we can see and predict? I feel like that's our responsibility. Yep. So one way that I've been able to give back from the people that I've learned from, right? I've been investing in mentors for a long time. I've met some amazing people here in Atlanta, entrepreneurs. So I feel like I had got to a point like, what can I do to share this information with other people? I can teach, yeah, but it's so much better to learn from that expert. So that's what really sparked my idea to create the media company, because I'm like, people can't afford to pay $10,000 to be in mentorship. People can't afford $50,000 to be in these rooms. Some people can't afford to pay $300 for mentorship. True. And by the grace of God, I was blessed to be in these rooms and have access. So with that access, I wanted to just share it with the world, and I birthed Black Wealth Weekly magazine. That's wonderful. And I'm looking forward to really, highlighting people like you guys that are on your journey, right? Because at the end of the day, wealth is about what you do a little bit over a long time. Yeah. So often we feel like we need to have a quick lick or something. But what I've seen is it's really about the little things that you do consistently over a long period of time, and people need to be able to follow that journey. So I love it because it's like a timestamp. We're going to timestamp where you are on your journey. We can follow you along, and then somebody can see themselves in you and find their way to wealth. So that's really the whole goal.
That's the entire purpose of the podcast.
That's the whole goal.
We fumbling towards financial literacy here.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing African Americans when they are on their journey towards wealth that you've seen?
Now, why was that important? Think about everything we just saw based on how these things are referenced. And this is how you can muddy up your message without even trying to. Everything that young lady said was dope. Let's be clear, right? I don't have a problem with anything she said. I have a problem with how you grab the audience attention by pointing to this article that we just reviewed. You said it as if it's a definite, but no context is there. This is why, again, I'm telling you, you got to be careful when we keep looking at these stats this way, because if you don't understand what you're looking at, you can be responsible for spreading something that isn't even real, right? Now, we're not going to say that black people ain't got to improve. But again, to the point, you get it free zone. There's a study. They don't know shit about the study. Respectfully, because there's no way you read that article. And again, it ain't but 30 pages. There's no way you read this report and at the end of it, you think we're going to be at zero at 2053. There's no way you get that from that. I understand that the intentions of those that wrote it, but based on what we're seeing, it just told you the projection was from the 80s to the middle of 2000s before COVID. And based on that projection, that's what they're saying is going to get us to zero. You have witnessed, and again, she's right, we will be alive for 2053. We was also alive after 2005, right? So if your projections from 1980 to the early 2000s, you should know that the projection would be wrong based on that alone. It can't work that way. You're living proof that it can't work that way because you know better. Now, again, this is where, again, I'm very careful with what I say and how I critique people that use this thing, because I understand this is a way to make people know we are in a state of emergency. I understand that, and I'll never deny that, because we got to get more serious about what we're doing. So the whole part about failing our way to wealth, I'm with that. I'm with Shorty making the publication, but just make sure that the study you got makes sense. Make sure the study that you're referencing is real, and that's actually backing up what you're saying. Because if not, you got people like me that'll scratch their head. Let me go look into that. Go look into it, and you realize that what you claiming ain't what's happening. Not the way you're saying it's going to happen. Let's take a look at something else. Let's keep breaking this thing down. Like I said, piece by piece, brick by brick, we're going to add this thing up. Black businesses in the U.S. Now, we know black businesses is something that will actually increase wealth based on extending in the family and our projections. So let's take a look at black people of the year 2023. 41% is a necessity base. That means it was started to support the needed lifestyle and income. 32% of people that created businesses, they started to pursue a business opportunity. And 27%, it's a multi-portfolio. They own multiple businesses. In total, black people in the year 2023 had over 3.5 million businesses. And from 2017 to 2023, it grew 2.5 times faster than a national average from the same year. What is that telling you? 3.5 million business with a growth 2.5 times greater than the average. So if our businesses are growing, why isn't that a way to close the gap? How can we possibly reach zero? How? Now, these are studies, that's from the U.S. Census Bureau. So this ain't nothing I made up. This ain't nothing that I found to kind of, further what I'm trying to say. No, I purposely found trusted sites and trusted sources that will show you that if you just did a little more research, you'll find that stat, although I understand the intention, was misrepresented based off a bad projection. That's all I'm saying about the stat. It is a bad projection with limited information, because the source and the goal of the people from Prosperity Now is to close the gap. But they had to first show that there's a gap and alarm and shake the people up in, the hill, right? That, hey, if y'all don't do something about this, black people are going to be at $0 in 2053. Now, think about what happened in that whole thing. So 2 things that they did I thought was very clever when you actually read it. They said that black and Latinos will be the majority minority in the country. So why does that matter to the lawmakers they're talking to? What they're saying by presenting information this way is that by that same year, 2053, there'll be more of us and we're going to be broke. And you don't want your broke black people and brown people causing shit. Give them better tax breaks when they file their taxes. Open up, loan them more money. Be more forgiving for their credit. That's the point as to why this 2053 and 0 is the crux of that whole report. Because the idea is I want to put fear and joke the people that I want to change these things. And this is the best way for me to illustrate it without being not that disingenuous, but still by misrepresenting what is happening. Because think about it. If you actually told the truth and you projected it out correctly, and at least in the graphs that they showed in the paper, let's say they just put an asterisk by it and said, hey, this is based on no economic growth, no policy changes, no this, no that. Well, the lawmakers that actually read the reports, they're going to be like, well, what the fuck are you crying for? That would be the natural retort. Because your projection is based off something that we know realistically doesn't happen. Time doesn't stand still. Nothing stands still in a way to where this decline is going to look as sharp. Now, you can argue that the progressive state can go down and decline, right? That can be an argument. But to say that we are at a linear decrease straight to 0 by 2053 is just disingenuous, bro. Stats don't work like that. People don't work like that. Behavior don't work like that. We know this to be true, right? That don't mean don't get your shit together. So I don't want you, when you hear that stat, to be like, oh, that's bullshit, blah, blah, black people doing fine, because that's not what I'm saying either. The gap is there. So don't misquote me by saying that there ain't a gap and we ain't got to close it. 2 things can be true, but we got to be honest about what is actually happening. Let's take a look at another little slide of presentation I got for y'all, right? We're going to walk this all the way down. Another source. This is the Federal Reserve. The wealth gap is it closing is being passed down. Now, the median net worth by race and ethnicity of household, this was in 2022. Black households, let's do a breakdown of where we are. The millennials, which is people born from 81 to 96, is about $7,500. Your Generation X's, that's the 65 to 80s, they had 17.6. The baby boomers from 46 to 64, they're at 60K. Now, look at how it compares to white people and why you could draw these unsafe conclusions based on this comparison shit. Millennials are at 102. The X's are at 250. The boomers at 1 million. Now, the gap between white and black household ranges from 7 to 17 times based on interactions. That's super important, right? So this is how I'm telling y'all that 2 things can be true, but not for the reason in which they're stated. This is why, again, I told y'all from the beginning of this shit, I am not here to discredit what the intention of that publication were to be. I am just here to actually show y'all what it actually means and to break it down in a way that actually makes sense. The gap is the attack, not the progression of the people. Keisha, what's good with it? That's the attack, all of this. It is not the projection. It is the gap. Projection can't be real. Want to know why the projection can't be real? Because black people have and always will fuel this economy. Let me show you. Black economic power fuels the American future. We spend at 1.7% trillion clip. Our businesses grow at 2.5% faster than the national average. We are building wealth. Again, the gap does exist, but we are building, and the generations ahead continue to increase. So the black income across generations are actually growing. This is our economic power. This is our lifeblood. It always has been, always will be, right? So this is why when you're taking a look at this projected line that they're trying to get you to buy into, this is why it can't be true. Those two things can't exist. We can't have all these businesses growing. We can't have black people being smarter. We can't have black people locating better. We can't do all these things and at the same time say that we're projected to be a zero at 2053. Just intellectually dishonest. I don't think it's done on purpose, right? And that's the part that I want to get across to you all. This isn't done on purpose, right? I don't think that when the prosperity group put this together, I do not think that they intended for it to spread like wildfire across the internet, because y'all got to think, I think the study and the publication was done in like 2013 or between 13 and 17, right? But I believe it was closer to 13. I don't think they knew that in 2026 it would revive again and black people will be still quoting something based off of projection that just a year, like if let's say hypothetically it was actually written in 2013. So from 2013 to 2026, that little gap should have let you know that things have changed so abruptly that the projection couldn't be right. But you have to be intellectually honest enough to reproject it. But it does hurt the messaging that you're trying to get to the people. It hurts the message and the narrative you're sending to the politicians. We got to close this gap. So I get why it makes more sense for you to focus on hyperbolizing the black growth to go to zero versus talking about that fucking gap that's always existed between black and white people. Because, you know, if you're basing your argument to lawmakers on the gap is too big, close it, you're less likely to get them to listen to you at all. See, so it's smart. So I think that the Prosperity Now groups, like the idea as to why they did it this way, is that you alarm those above you by saying that those beneath you can't grow and they'll be at zero. So the fear of the people that you're quote unquote oppressing going to zero puts a lot more fear in you than saying, hey, those beneath you want to close the gap. You see how that's less threatening? So as opposed to covering the gap that our white counterparts had on us from the 80s up into the 2026s for the last 40, 60 years, as opposed to talking about that glaring gap, no. Let's project the bottom to go to zero. Because no matter how you feel about us, to the lawmakers, if they see reports that are saying black people will be at zero at 2053 and there'll be more of them, don't nobody want that smoke. You don't want a whole class of black people. You got to think, this study was talking about the middle class of us, the high class of us, and the low class. So even the classes, all of them will be at zero based on the report. You see what I'm saying? Shout out to Free Zone Lou, doing more digging. I can't trust that group for real. It's a DC-based political group, and oftentimes the government does a terrible job at this kind of stuff. That is a fact, bro. This is why it's important to know who is writing these articles. What is the intention? Because the moment you take your eye off the ball, that's when you get clipped, because you're not paying attention to what's actually happening, what's actually being said. So the idea is that they're putting fear into those that they're trying to manipulate to get better policies for. Now, here's the other issue I had with the paper. If you read into it more, one of the solutions they had that I think is a common misstep with us as a people is that the idea is that before they even want to address the gap that the top of us are having to compete with our counterparts, they'd rather close the gap between us first before you address the gap that's always existed from those higher than us. So as opposed to you focusing on the gap that you know naturally exists, you just want to make the poor of us be competitive with the middle of us. Now, if y'all ain't been paying attention, this is where it gets deep. What's up, Venus? What's good with it? This is where it really gets deep. The danger in doing that, if your only focus is to get, let's say, the poor class amongst us to middle class status, is you are stifling the fucking middle class. right? So even if you're a person that wants to put a highlight and a spotlight on black people, the opportunity has to go top to bottom, unfortunately, because getting the lowest of us to reach the level to where they're competitive with the middle class, all that does is make all of us more poor because you refuse to acknowledge the actual gap that matters. Fuck white people. Let's just talk about the haves and the have-nots for a second here, right? If you got the lowest of us competing and the middle class of us, which is what most of us are, right? You're middle class, but what's wild is, shocker, that middle class number, that medium number for the households, it keeps slowly climbing. Think 10 years or 15 years ago, you know what the medium household income was? About 60, 70,000. That would make you, I think, at the time, I think it was middle upper class. You know what the middle class range is now? I think at the high end, it's like 140,000. But you see how that gap between that 100,000 everybody loves talking about on the internet, how that now has become the new middle class. And so what people were competing to do when Kevin Samuels was alive, become a six-figure earner, blah, 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 blah. That was cool, but nobody adjusted it based on the fact that that number that would have put you as elite doesn't anymore. Our debt has went up. The value of the dollars went down. So what used to be, let's say 10, 15 years ago, 100,000 was the goal. Now it's more like 140, 160. Just for you to bring home 100,000. Only to still be middle class. Ain't this a bitch? And so even with prosperity now, their goal, even after everything I just showed y'all, like if you actually read what they say, their goal is more looking like, okay, let's bring up that lower 50% or the lower like 10%, and let's get them to be more competitive with their other black counterparts. Shout out 2K. That nigga's funny. I'm pro as fuck. But you see how this is working? Even the group that put this study out, their focus wasn't to close the actual gap that exists between us and white people. It's, hey, y'all, black people going to be poor by 2053. Hey, lawmakers, you better get nervous because also in that same time frame, 2053, there'll be more black people and brown people. It's going to be a lot of them, and they ain't going to have no money. You better close the gap now, or they're going to be on your ass in 2054. That was their purpose of doing it. But even when you get their attention through that alarming stat based on a terrible projection, your solution to that is then to educate the poorest of us. And this has always happened. America has a way of putting people that want to progress in this bottleneck, and they squeeze from both ends. This is where it gets cold. Pause. So what happens is the squeeze at the bottom is to push up those that are at the bottom to become middle class, but you also have capped off the middle class to where they can't get no higher because you keep raising the stakes on what it means to be middle class. So 100,000, which would have put you at the top 1%, they don't do that no more. So you're steady pushing the people that are at the bottom to get paid more, doing gas station jobs. Again, these jobs are the bloodline of our people, so don't get it fucked up, right? So we're not saying they should be underpaid at all, but I'm saying is this growth never happens to those in the middle that are actually in the fight. The motherfuckers have been going to work every day at decent enough jobs that pay better than $20 an hour. So as you're making the poor people go from $7 to $13, you did nothing for the person making 20 trying to get to 25. You've done nothing for the person at 18 trying to get to 23. No, you just care about the person that you've been underpaying for all these years to get them up a little higher. So even when you put this alarming stat on the floor, you're still not advocating for the best of us to be better. That's my problem with the report. By bringing our attention to something, although under false pretense, your solution to that is to pay the poor a couple more dollars? How the fuck does that help the black people that are getting married and forming more families? You see what I'm saying? Appreciate you, 2K. This is why all this shit is tied in and why it's super important for us to keep the main thing, because if you take your eye off the ball, you fucked, right? So again, if y'all haven't, I'm telling you, I'm encouraging you, go back and pull this actual article up. I'll do it one more time. I had a couple people come in. I want to make sure that this point is crystal clear. There's a few things I want to make sure y'all walk away with, because again, when I read, I'm like, yo, people got to see what's actually happening. Let me pull it back up one more time, right? This is to drive this all home. Give me 1 second, y'all. Take a look at this. This is where this 2053 came from. It's called the Road to Zero Wealth Report. And this is the group. If you look in the middle of the screen, there is a link for you to read this full report. At the bottom, those are the authors. The group is Prosperity Now. The projection was based on a time period where Black people were declining. They said that based on that decline happening over and over again with no changes, that's what would put us at zero. Not that we would actually be at zero, but in the time period they measured, when we were going down, they assumed that we keep going down. That is a bad assumption. And look at the solutions. Build wealth from the bottom up. How do you do that? You see what I'm saying? You see how even look at the root causes. Now, the root causes I think are cool, right? But it still isn't inclusive to those that are already doing the right thing. And I think that as a people, when we have the stage, that's where we fuck up at. Right? And now I'm just, this is going to hurt, but this is just real shit. We are getting to the point to where when people are trying to make a point, they're using the worst of us to illustrate the example. Half of the shit we talk about online, we talk about the baby mamas, the niggas that did time, the broken families. This is the bottom 10% of us. You want to know why? Because that jokes the people you trying to get all this money from. You see what I'm saying? You see how this works? If you're going to focus on the worst of us and you're trying to bring the worst of us up, how does that make any sense if there's a fucking ceiling on those that were already doing the right thing the whole time? And I'm all for helping people, especially people that look like me. But if us in the middle, the thinking people, if we're not careful, you're going to find yourself nose to nose, neck to neck with people that were below you. Because they about to wipe this middle class the fuck out. And I don't even think they plan to do it on purpose. I don't think this is purposely done this way. But this is why we got to be very careful for who's advocating for us and why. See what I'm saying? But think about how all that growth I've shown y'all from, shit, I didn't even go no further than 2023. 2.5 more businesses than we've ever had. Our spending power is going up. Our assets are going up. Our homes are actually going up. All these things are going up. But the narrative seems to be by 2053, we're going to be at zero. Make it make sense. It don't. The report tells you why. It's right there. One more thing for those that just came in, because I want y'all to at least walk away with why this thing looks and sounds so crazy when you read the article. Gotta bring this up one more time. If you've seen it, humor me. You know, again, we got a couple people coming. I want them to see that. This is why this stat is so dangerous. The assumption is that the problem is linear, and it never has been. In order for their projection to be right, we would have to repeat the same thing in the past. You have no behavior change, no policy changes, no economic shock, and only one outcome. On the right is more like what actually happens with any people. The behavior changes. We get new policies. People invest more. The education changes. Multiple possible futures. What are you focused on? That matters. Right? That has to matter. What are you focused on when you get that stat? That has to matter. When you read that stat, why are you saying it? Is it because you want better for the people? Or does it further your narrative that black people ain't shit? There's two types of people out here that exist. We just played videos to where we saw two people that, you know, based on us doing our breakdown, I showed y'all videos of people and how they use the stat as an opener. They say the same thing. Well, a study says, blah, 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 blah. Go to my website where we're promoting black people. or this is why we got to do da. But how you open it might fuck up and hamper the rest of your message because it's built on a false foundation. We can't keep doing that shit, bro. It's got to make sense. You're right, Vintage. These people are extremely calculated. It's a shocker because when I heard it, even when I heard the shit, I was like, damn, that's kind of crazy. We're going to be on that? That's wild. Now, to give the prosperity group some grace, like I told you, go to their YouTube channel, check them out. They got some great seminars. It's about an hour long, to where the same people that wrote the article, they do have some good tools in place for people to get better. So I'm not saying that they're wrong for what they're currently doing. I'm just saying that how they projected that was intellectually lazy as fuck. Nobody takes the worst of you from a small time period and then say, well, if y'all keep being as bad as y'all was in them 10 years, you're going to be a zero. Duh, motherfucker. That's common sense. What projection ever worked like that, though? When has it ever worked that way? You see how I get kind of dark? Don't make sense. Sound good. Sounds great, right? But let's be intellectually honest when we keep saying it. And I understand it because even me, when I heard this shit, I was like, okay, damn, we got to get our shit together before 2053. Why wasn't the thought, as Black people, we have been getting our shit together. Let's find more ways to get more people on it. You see how that sounds different in your brain? So as opposed to you worry about going to zero, you're worried about trying to stack up what you already got. This is why how you say shit, how you present things matter to the people that you're talking to, right? Having a room grabber, that's what I call them. The way you just say something that's so jolting that it brings everybody to attention, that's cool. But make sure you're being honest when you're doing that shit. Because think about it, that gap that has existed between us and our white counterparts has always been the same fucking size because we're mirroring each other. Right? And it's funny that when you read the article, it has the Black and the brown people doing this and white people constantly doing that. How is that possible if we're all in the same economy? That don't even make sense. So you're going to assume that in the same economy, Black people going to get worse and white people get better? When for the last 60 years, as we decline, they decline. As we increase, they increase. Which is why the gap is a better conversation to have, but more comfortable than you talking about a projection that ain't real. Attack the gap. Nowhere in the last 80 years have I found that any of these things I'm looking at will ever show Black people intersecting and then running parallel to white people. I ain't seen a projection for that yet. But that's uncomfortable. Because now you're telling a have-nots that, nigga, I don't like the gap no more. I want to start competing with them. They gonna look at you and be like, so? Always been poor people. You one of them, accept it. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap, right? This is where you got to be careful with how you frame things and what you actually saying. It matters, bro. It has to. Right? And I'm pretty sure if I dug deep enough into any of these stats and I start reading it and breaking down the publication, look at how they got the data, you'll find that a lot of this shit it's studied for a reason, right? But you better know where you're getting it from. You be fucked up. You better here projecting things that just ain't factually accurate. Because what's wild is for all those, because again, I think that was a group of economics, like they're economists based on the author. So I did a little more background research on each of them individually. So they're smart enough to know that what they're doing is a sleight of hand. They'll never tell you that though. Because now we can't ring the alarm saying, hey, Black folks gonna be at zero in 2053. It fucks up the whole publication. Because the idea isn't really to address the gap. It's about how do we get people more aware and shock them into being more financially literate. You can do that and you can also be honest. That's my point. Two things can happen. But scaring them to death on something that the projection ain't real, I don't know if that's a healthy way to do it, because the people that published it, that's exactly what happened. They took the worst area and the worst time for us, took that decline, and then projected it out for the next 45 years or so to get to 2053. Hell, by the time they published it, again, COVID hadn't even happened. Right? So none of that was taken into account. The president wasn't taken into account. The policies have changed, either good or bad. None of that has been taken into account. They're just saying that based on where we currently are, from the time we dipped, y'all gonna keep dipping, white people gonna keep going up, and y'all gonna be at zero. That was supposed to scare those in the upper hill to be like, hey, you're gonna have a problem on your hands in 2053, because the black and brown people, again, they will be the majority of the minority of people, and none of them will have money. So the fear was to incite in white people, if you don't do something to appease the lower of us, we'll all be low and we're going to raise hell. I get why they did it that way. But again, even in their approach, and this is something that I'm vehemently against. If you're going to help us as a people, we have to incentivize those that were already doing right, because at that point, there is no fucking incentive. Help those that are downtrodden. I'm always for that, right? You'll never hear me speak against that shit. We can find ways to rehabilitate our people from criminality to real jobs. That's dope. If we can find ways to support and strengthen our single motherhood, that's dope. I'm with all that shit. But don't forget the people that's been doing it right the whole time you've been worried about everybody. Because now what's happening is those that will progress past this point of they're not super poor, but they're not super rich, they become a little more calculated. They stop playing your game altogether. So now when you get everybody even, so let's say you bring the law of us here. Now everybody's here, we all together. Those that's been here for the whole time trying to maintain where they currently at, they don't want no fucking kids. You just added another shit. I think I did. I'm not even gonna say what the current projection is for someone raising a kid, because I haven't studied that. So let me not be intellectually dishonest. I'm just saying that single black people that are doing well and doing what the fuck they supposed to do, there is no incentive for them to have kids based on the financial burden. So at the very least, it does make sense when we get married, right? Which would lead to kids and a family. But based on what's happening is, if those people, those same black people that's been doing the right thing the whole time, if they see that there's a ceiling here, and every time I think I'm middle class, y'all keep adding another 30, 40,000. You keep adding another 40,000 on top of that. That 100,000 that Kevin Sanders talking about, that shit ain't top 1% nothing anymore. Nigga, that makes you middle class now. You keep raising the ceiling on people that's been doing their thing and doing the right thing for so long, because you're so worried about the 10% of us that do need help. But we all do. But all that's going to do is make the growth for those that have been doing the thing. Now you're just giving them more competition, which is going to breed contempt. Now people they don't want the handout. They don't want, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really want those beneath you to do better than you. And this is a fucked up selfish thing, but this is just the truth of how people's brains work, right? By all means, go get the downtrodden of us that look like me. But damn, don't cap me out because you're trying to bring the worst of us up. When the fuck has that ever happened? Or been successful, right? The best of us gonna keep being the best of us. Keep doing your thing. I'm not saying stop that. I'm just saying that the purpose of those that are doing these things has to be studied correctly and has to be reported accurately, because that projection isn't based off anything real, and it's only based off the decline of people that should have no behavior change, no policy change, and no education. So even without saying it, what they're saying is, as a black people, you will stay stupid. You won't do anything to get better, and they're banking on you being worse. That's the only way that study makes sense. Think about how cold that is. In order for you to go get help, you got to project that we're going to be as bad as we were. We ain't going to get no better. Think about the mentality and the message you're sending out to people by even reporting it that way. That's cold shit. So we've gotten worse, but white people won't. Based on that report, this is based on this report. Read the shit yourself. You be like, huh? That don't make sense. Yeah, it don't. Because if we gonna get bad, they will too. Now, it won't be as worse as we are, but again, that fucking gap. When y'all are ever looking at Black progression. When you're looking at it by itself, that's super important because then you can actually appreciate where you are on this whole rat race and how far you've come. Now, if you think you need work, that's cool. I'm not saying don't do the work. Always get better, right? So that's the message. Get better. That's cool. But whenever you transpose that Black progress to white counterparts, that fucking gap is going to bother you. I transposed it a few times and it's been bothering me ever since because I'm competitive, right? But no one wants to talk about that gap where we're mirroring each other. But even in our progress, you want to focus on the worst of us to bring them up, but you're still not addressing those above us have always been that way. And they got going to keep growing. Why wouldn't it? See how that worked? So again, this is just a quick cook up, man. I didn't want to keep y'all too long, man, but this was super important. Again, when you do get a chance, make sure you check out the group for yourself. Read the publication. I'll put it up one more time. And again, drop by their YouTube page. They actually have a YouTube page. They do good work. So I'm not saying that this is a completely terrible group. I just wanted y'all to put on y'all thinking caps with me for a second and really break down what you're looking at. Again, here is a link to the article, prosperitynow.org, Road to Zero Wealth. It's about 30 or 40 pages or something. Here are your authors, and here are the breakdown of it. But when you actually get into this article, you'll see, based on a projection, what's happening and why it's happening. The group is Prosperity Now. That is their name on YouTube. Go find them. Again, I've listened to some of the sessions, and this is why I'm not completely kicking their backs in right now, because I do think that it has some good information. So I can't completely shit on them, but I can critique the fact that you're being intellectually dishonest, right? So two things can be true. You can be doing a good job with educating people and outreach, but you can also be misrepresenting our progress. And again, if we were talking about our fucking kids, what you wouldn't want is for your teacher, where you got your kid in the class, you wouldn't want your teacher saying, well, I mean, they just suck. And based on them getting a C in the second quarter, if they keep getting that C, they're going to be at an F by the end of the year. What? How many tests are you giving? Oh, we probably got 16 of them. How many they took? About 5. What? And so you're saying in the next 11 tests, because they made this one C, they're going to be at the F and fail the class? You see how you take that logic and apply it and project it to anything else that sounds fucking stupid? Let's do it with gas prices, something that we all love, right? Y'all go to the gas pump. Who the fuck would have ever thought that your president would get on TV, we turn up into a war, and gas goes up to $4? Imagine telling your mama when you was a kid and she was at the pump for $1 and some change. Well, based on it being $1 and because it went down for these 2 years, we should be at 30 cents by the time I'm an adult. You see how that sounds stupid any other way? Well, how can that sound stupid, but this don't? Or at least be questionable at the very least. Projections are great when you're trying to track positive growth and even negative growth. It's a great way for you to know where you are, but you have to make sure you're going back and addressing the updates to your projection. The projection is there only to bring an attention to the people and, to be honest, based on behaviors. Why? But you only do it based on things you can control. If you're on a weight loss goal, right? And again, I keep using the example because I really want to drive this home for y'all. Let's say your goal is to lose 20 pounds, right? In the first 2 months, you're down 3 pounds, right? And somewhere in between, you went from 1 pound to 3 pounds. So you're like, okay, that's a 2-pound drop. Well, based on that, I ain't but 200 pounds. So does that mean in 100 months, I'm going to weigh nothing? No, that ain't what the fuck that means. Because weight don't work like that. But you see how if you project incorrectly, you're having a bad result? This ain't no different. They took a time in history based on where they were when they made the report, left out about 4 or 5 years from the actual time it was done to the data they had accessible. They pinpointed a time because the idea is to talk to those above them and say, hey, the black and brown people, it's going to be a lot of them in 2053, and they ain't going to have no money. You might want to do something about that now. That was the whole purpose of that. Do I agree with how they did it? I don't know if I would have represented it that way, but that was the goal of it. But then you got other content creators. Again, we've seen the videos to where in passing, they say it to grab your attention, which it works, and then they kind of move past it a little bit. And again, I don't think it's done on purpose because, again, you can use the information and make us better, but you can also do it in a way that's honest to our growth because you're doing it as service to those who have been doing it right. I get it. We want all of our black brothers and sisters in the class that got an F. We need them niggas to pass too. We want to get them to a C. We're also trying to get the niggas that were making B's and C's. We're trying to get them to A's. Because if I told you that was a plan for your student, you'd think I was fucking crazy. If I was like, hey, Mrs. Such and Such, Miss Such and Such, your child is doing amazing. They're about a B average right now, but we got like 10 people in the back of the class that got F's. So we're going to keep your kid about a B. So I ain't really going to work on getting them better until we get everybody on the same level. That sounds fucking insane, don't it? Why is it I can pull example out of example from just talking to y'all and show you how economic progress, no progress works this way outside of how we project this. It doesn't work that way. But somehow in this whole fight of us being better, we've forgotten that far more of us have been doing the right thing longer than those who've been fucking up. Those who've been fucking up since fucking up. Let's start there. 30s, 40s, 50s, keep going back, 20s. Yeah, there's always been those that have been pushing through to get better. There's always been those that don't have it. I'm not saying ignore them people. I'm just saying that as the years have progressed, it seems like we love cherry picking the worst of us to represent all of us. You be mad as hell somebody did that to your kid. Be mad as hell somebody did that to you. You got a class of 20 kids. 3 of them get Fs. If I was then to say, damn, all them students in there stupid as hell. What's the first thing you do as a parent? Well, I don't know who the fuck he talking to. My kid made honor roll. So we know how to separate then, right? But then when it comes to us having these conversations, we think that the worst of us is us, which makes them want to project from the bottom of us. You see how that work? Just keep it in mind. So again, I don't think that, back to the original point, I think that projection, the reporting of the numbers were accurate up until the projection. Because the true story isn't in us projecting to zero. The true story is, why the fuck has that gap been that way since we've been tracking this thing? That's something that's very apparent. That somehow our C students, that's the best of us as black people, we can't ever seem to get an A. And white people, even when the test sucks, the worst they'll do is a B minus. We seem to only be at a C. We got to get them F niggas to make a C. Ain't nobody said a fucking thing about those that are kind of there that need a little bit more. Nobody talks about them people. You become invisible because the focus has and always will be the worst of us. I get it's more salacious. But be careful that by us having these conversations and fighting and reaching down, that you don't forget that your fight is still above you too. You still got to get better. Give a fuck how bad the worst of us is, because there will always be the worst of us, and there'll always be that behavior. Correct what you can, but don't take your eye off the ball, or don't get too comfortable. Because while you comfortably sit at your office job and you don't ask for that raise and you're not striving for more, that middle class that you think you're comfortable at becomes low middle class, becomes low class very quickly, because the gap is closing. The progression isn't. That's what a conversation is. If everything doesn't move in synchronicity, we're gonna be fucked. Because if we're only worried about the worst of us getting better, and we're not worried about the better of us improving and expanding, we fucked anyway. I think I did a pretty good job covering it, man. Make sure y'all drop y'all like, share this stream. Again, I wanted to be super quick, but I did want to be very informative and really break down the way you do it. So quick recap and we get up out of here. When you see a stat, the first thing you should do is find the source of the stat. Start there. Find the source. When you find the source, look at where it's published and who published it. Why'd you write it? The author normally will tell you that because they're associated with groups, organizations. You can look into what they did. Where they publish it matters. Right? So before we had the great internet chat GPT, there were things called publications, journals, and articles, right? All similar works had to been vetted. The people that submitted it had to go in front of a committee. You had to be vetted for the information to be correct and factual. And then it gets published by other peers that have acknowledged it. We have skipped a lot of steps. So a lot of the numbers we getting, we can't verify. Was it published by people that are your peers that accept your research to be true and factual? That doesn't have to be the case. See what I'm saying? Doesn't have to be the case. So be careful where you're getting these numbers from. A lot of times we'll pull numbers from a New York Times article, or we'll pull it from, but think about how the journal matters to who's publishing it, because it speaks to why they're publishing it. As someone has done research, I worked literally in a laboratory to where our money came from how many articles we could get published and how many government grants we could get. But the idea is that we were publishing things to illustrate the problems that we had the money. We wanted the money to fix them. So a lot of times you'll find that companies highlight a problem that ain't as big as they think it is because there's money on the other side of yelling at people. Hey, we got a problem down here. Give us some money. We'll fix it. Motivation matters. Why are you writing it? Why are you saying it? Why are you repeating it? And again, I don't do this all the time, but I heard this enough. That alarmed me enough to let me look into this shit. I'm not saying I do this all the time, but I'm saying if you're going to be honest and if you hear something that makes your ears perk up, you owe it to yourself to find the source, find the author, find where it's published, look at the data. A lot of times, even if you see a graph that jumps out at you, read the footnotes. That's where the info is. That's when somebody be like, oh, yeah, by the way, bro, let me pull you this. Let me holler at you. When you're looking at a graph that's in a big-ass article, a few things you should go through. And again, I'm going to keep it real brief. First, you either have the abstract or the discussion. What the abstract is going to do is bust down exactly what we're studying, why we're studying, what we found, and why you should be reading this. Even if you lazy, you ain't got to go through all of the shit. Hit the abstract real quick. It's a real tight paragraph. It's meant to be that way on purpose so that you ain't reading some shit you're not interested in. But in that, it'll tell you how we control this experiment, what we're trying to measure, why it's important, and what we plan to do afterwards. The abstract is going to be the lifeline, the lifeblood of the whole article. Then you can jump straight to the data section. That's probably why you were here in the first place. You saw a stat that bothered you. Look at the graphs. Look at the footnote of the graph. That's going to get a context as to how they collected the data. They'll be like, okay, we collected this data from bop, 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 bop. And normally that footnote will make you be like, hold on, y'all did what? Oh, this is a random study we did in Tuscaloosa, bop, 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 from 3 people. What the fuck? And you projected from 3 people that we going to do what again? Interesting. That's what just happened with this 2053 stat. Be careful. You be equipped with the tools to do something about it. Now, I'm not saying get lazy. I'm not saying get comfortable. 2053 is a year just like any other year. As Black people, we still got to get better. Don't get this fucked up. I ain't telling y'all to be comfortable. We still sitting about a C. We getting better, but better ain't the goal. We got shit we're really trying to hit. Get your financial literacy up. Be more conscious of what you're spending. Save a little more. Put it somewhere where it can grow. Talk to people that's done it before you. Information is free floating. So just like you could find a stat, you could find somebody to help you save some paper. Find somebody that can help you invest some money. I'm not telling you niggas to run out and be business owners. Everybody ain't cut for that life. That's a different branch altogether, right? Do what works, but leverage what you're already doing. So the urgency should be there. Don't take this live and think that 2053 isn't a real time point, but it was based off of projection. You should be thinking that, again, that gap between us and our white counterparts is large as fuck. We got to close that. And that number and that threshold to be middle class, where we all want to sit with our house and picket fence, that number keeps going up and up and up. Make sure you stand competitive. Because you don't want to be the person that's worried about the complete bottom of you and you've been looking down so long that you become them. Not even because you're doing nothing wrong. We went from getting the worst of us up to us and, yo, let's pull them up as we should. But this hand dropped. You went from reaching with this hand and coming down to help those beneath you. And then you do this. All right, now we lock step. Holy shit. Now we just down here together. See how that work? Walk and chew gum, black people. We can fight for the best. We can fight for the worst of us to represent the worst of us while still making sure we fight for ourselves. I'll tell everybody I talk to now, if your ass is at a 9 to 5, you've been there more than 3 years, you should be at your next performance review asking for 20, 30 grand more. For no other reason other than I've been here 3 years. Pay me more for my experience. Your next job, 40 grand more right off top. Why? Because you're going to pay me for where I was before. This is the little things you can do without having to start a business. Ask for it. The budget's there. They're only going to pay you what you ask for. We don't even know how to ask. You feel uncomfortable asking for what you already earned. I out-negotiate the best of them. All they're going to do is counter you. And this is some real life shit. So this is why I'm sticking with this part of the show so well, because the best of us have to get tools to leverage being the best to get better while worried about those beneath us. If you are at a job and you're thinking about transitioning your career and you've been at your prior job for 3 to 5 years or better, make sure that you're asking for at least 30 to 40 grand more. And don't blink when you do it. This is after the interview. Don't make yourself think that you can ever out-negotiate a company that wants you. The hard part is done. You've interviewed, you've shown you qualified, they want you. Your fight is with HR, not with the person that you're going to be working with. They won't even know how much money you're making. HR got the budget. So the best of us don't get comfortable. You comfortable now. But God bless the dead, when Kevin Samuels was talking many years ago, he was telling everybody, yo, 6-figure guys, and again, the value and high quality, that's cool. That can't be your metric 10, 12 years later. 100K is where the taxes start coming in a little different. You better get to 130. Find somebody you rocking with that's at 132 to put you at 260. Add a couple of assets, now you at 3, 4. You see how this works? See how a household could be worth $500,000 because you asked for 30 grand more and your old lady did too? The guy you with, y'all both asked for 30, 40 grand more when you moved up. You asked for more money at your performance reviews. We got to do the small things while also being aware from those of us that are beneath us. 2 things can happen. I can ask for those that are making $7 an hour to make 13 and 14 while getting my 40 grand. I can do 2 things. Walk and chew gum. Don't let nobody ever belittle your progress, but don't ever stop striving. You got to have one hand up, one hand down. If you really care. Don't ever put both of them down. Don't do this. Balance is what you need when we talk about these things. Because all black people count. We're represented by them all. With that, I'm going to bid y'all a night, man. Y'all have a great evening. Again, we'll be back next week. I hope y'all enjoyed the stream, man. Hope you learned something. Share this with people that haven't seen it. Again, make sure you do check out Prosperity Now. They do have a YouTube channel. Look at the article yourself and see whether you came to the same conclusion. I'd be interested to see what y'all gathered from it. Had a little free time on my hands, my job, so I was like, fuck it, let me take a look at this article. And that's kind of what I gathered, is that that time period mattered to them. But I saw something different. And that's the beauty of actually doing the work yourself. If it's important to you, you'll do the work. Don't cheat yourself if you're doing the right thing. You can advocate for those beneath you while also getting your just due. Do both. Don't let nobody shortchange you by focusing on the worst of us while leaving you neglected. Two things can happen at once. But if you've gotten this far in life and you're watching this from a comfortable salary position, or you're watching this and you think your life is good, just know you better leverage it to make it better. Because those that are printing articles like that, they're just trying to close the gap from the worst of you to the middle of you. Because ain't nobody worried about the gap that exists above you. Ain't this a bitch? You better worry about it. That's all I got. We can all be better. The progress don't stop by you judging those beneath you. Those that above you is doing their thing. Let's join them. Let's become healthy competitors, because we are growing. We clap, but we don't slow down. We don't stop the progress. We got a lot of homework to do. Y'all get to it. I love it. See y'all next time, man. Until then, peace.
It's alright if it's okay. I put in my time, you pick the place, and I ain't sure to play, babe. Just a little Marvin Gaye and Bombay, babe. Yeah, easy to see, but she hard to find. Cut from the cloth, her couture line. Her control lines, her silhouette behind the dull eyes. You see the sunset. Steph Curry half court when my wrist flex. She ain't even blink, cause she ain't impressed. Don't need your bread, cause she got that. Need a hustle in hand, she provide that. Haven't seen a mind that resides in the face. With a body up your game, she a whole upgrade. Fuck with shorty, she hit you with the whole up face. Yeah, she from the hood, so she know all the games. She know how you jug, know when you straight. She ain't got a lot of time to fuck around the waist. Fingers intertwined with the hands of time. For this moment, baby, you could be mine. If it's alright, if it's okay. I put in my time, you pick the place, and I ain't sure to play, babe. Just a little Marvin Gaye and Bombay, babe. With your chillin' persona, double cup marijuana, what heaven's bringing together. Let no man bring us under. The nights I'm on sober and the covers upon us, and I'm digging you deeper. You whisper, dig a little further. I'm digging inside the crevices of your mind. Your third eye screams and climax with mine. So for the first time, I'm so goddamn high. My pineal gland show me love is blind. Bitch, you soft behind with the high divine. Pluck and suck your grape stream from your insides wine. Are we coming and going? Too tight to the side. I'm deeper inside, gliding side to side. So you match my mind and I match your fly. Heaven watch you move. This is a hell of a night. So the vibe is right, potent and strong. Bombay, put some Marvin on.